I was raised in a mainstream Mormon family on the west coast of British Columbia after my parents had moved from southern Alberta. We lived in Gibsons and then in Richmond. My ancestors were polygamous. My father had 2 grandmothers married to his grandfather at the same time, but my mother and father had given up the practice of polygamy. They believed that they would practice polygamy in the Mormon afterlife. Although my mother lived in fear that my father would change his mind and go back to the original teachings of the Mormon Church, which advocates polygamy. The founder of the Mormon Church in the 1800s, Joseph Smith, in 10 years he married 49 women. Some of them married to other men at the time. And my ancestors were his followers, and they adopted the doctrine of the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church is also known as the LDS Church or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. When my parents were married in the Alberta Temple, Mormon Temple, which is the gateway to Mormon heaven, they promised all their time, their talents, and all of their unborn children to the Mormon Church. I was one of them. They also swore a blood oath during those secret ceremonies to protect the church with their life. And they mocked having their throat cut and being disemboweled if they didn't. So the Mormon Church, thank you, is that better? Okay. So the Mormon Church was in charge of my parents and their parenting. As a child, I did have difficulty with that. I knew when I was baptized at 8 that I didn't believe the Mormon Church or the Mormon doctrine, but that I had no choice to live it. So I basically lived a lie. My father was highly respected in the Mormon Church, but he was also a very violent man. So I learned early how to stay safe, and that meant following the Mormon doctrine, according to my parents and the church. At 18, the limitations actually that I was raised with were don't think, don't feel, and don't question. And the mantra was accept, obey, and take your place in the patriarchal structure. At 18, I decided that I had 2 choices. If I wanted to remain in the family, I would have to remain a Mormon. If I wanted to learn how to think for myself and make my own decisions, I would have to leave my family. And I did that at 18. I thought, and I built a life for myself. As I mentioned, I worked in an ad agency. I then went into law, and I had a family. And I never gave a lot of thought to the Mormon Church. I shelved it away. It was something that I considered shameful. I wasn't about to talk to anyone about my religious background. And I happened to read an article in the Sun about the tax fraud that was going on in Bountiful. And it triggered something many, many years later. And I realized I had some unfinished business with my family, with the Mormon Church. And so I sat down and I wrote an article. It took me just a few minutes, actually. It was called Polygamy and Me Growing Up Mormon. And I sent it into the Sun and they published it. I was thrilled. But what surprised me was how many questions I got from that article. I thought everyone knew about the Mormon Church. I thought everyone knew about polygamy. And I was surprised to find that we didn't. And so that's what started me writing. I've written my memoir, In Polygamy's Shadow, From a Mormon Childhood to a Life of Choice. I did go on to write a second book, actually. In Polygamy Shadow, I refer to the journal that my father kept during his Mormon missionary years in Texas and Louisiana. So I published that as, I only write the prologue and the epilogue for that. I published that as is. It's an entirely different type of a book than my memoir. But I thought, and I'm in the process of writing a third. So many people who've read my book who've read In Polygamy's Shadow, ask me, how did you get so normal? I usually say, well, I'm not. But anyway, that's in the works. So I did bring a couple of short excerpts to read to you from two of my chapters. The first one, which I think I chose it because it answers the curiosity many people have about the kind of underwear that Mormons wear. Yes, they do. And it's called Mormon Underwear. Over the summer, I scanned the pages of children's clothes in the catalog so often that there were smudge marks on the pictures from my fingers. Mom had promised to buy me new shoes and the underwear for grade 1. Pictured on the underwear page beside the plain white was a stack of delicate lace-trimmed panties in pink, yellow, and blue. A smiling blonde girl, so perfect she could have been a doll, wore a pair of the pink panties and a matching lace undershirt. Mom, these are so beautiful. Faint with desire, I sat at the kitchen table one afternoon and pointed to the colors fanned out on the page. Can we get these for school? I was sure, even though I had brown hair, that they would make me look as elegant as the blonde girl in the catalog. We don't have money for frivolous things. Mom's voice was sharp. She sat across from me mending one of Dad's gray work socks. They won't last any time at all. They're made of flimsy material. I slumped in my chair and blinked back tears. I knew she'd probably say no, but I wanted them so much I hoped this one time she might say yes. When you get married, all you'll wear are white garments, not fancy colored underwear, so you may as well get used to it now. She finished the heel of Dad's sock, bit off the end of the thread, and picked up another. Temple garments are sacred. They'll protect you from the evil in the world if you wear them day and night. She was talking about the baggy Mormon underwear she wore. Everyone in the family knew about the garments. We weren't supposed to talk about them, ever. If anyone outside the family asked us about the special underwear Mormons wore, we were not supposed to answer. I had never seen Mom in her garments, only watched them fluttering on the clothesline. Neighbors noticed them. On wash day, some of the women slowed down in front of our house and inspected our clothesline. I examined the garments on the line one morning up close when Mom wasn't around. Some of the pairs had to be Dad's. A picture of him wearing temple garments popped into my mind. I thought of something else right away. Temple garments were made of thin white material, all in one piece with short arms and legs. There were buttons down the front and special markings embroidered on the chest, at the waist, and above one of the knees. When the wind blew them straight out on the line, the part between the legs separated and opened up. That had to be so Mom could go to the bathroom without taking them off. I shuddered at the thought of how difficult it must be to pee without getting them all wet. Mom's underwear was different than any of the pictures of ladies' underwear in the catalog Janice and I giggled over when no one was around. Mom didn't wear sleeveless dresses or blouses or short shorts in the summer. If she had, her sacred temple garments would have shown. Mom folded Dad's mended socks together in a pair and gave me her full attention. From the day you're married in the temple, you'll wear garments. I squirmed. The thought of being encased in clingy material made me feel sweaty and uncomfortable. God wants women to be modest and keep their bodies covered. Mom's voice held a note of surety that brooked no argument. And I'm going to read just a short little section from one of my chapters on polygamy. The man entered our lives on a sunburned day at the end of May when I was 11. Dad was at his bishopric meeting after Sunday school. Mom was lingering in front of the chapel with my younger brothers, and Rob was putting away the sacrament trays. Sarah, Janice, and I had decided to wait in the car in the parking lot. As we sauntered toward the station wagon, a balding man dashed for our car with his hand outstretched. He left a young pregnant woman and a bunch of kids in front of the building next to the chapel. He smiled straight at Sarah and reached for the door handle. He was fat and had pointy little teeth. "Let me do that for you," he said with an oily snigger. My stomach turned over. His tone of voice was the same kind the boys at school used when they told dirty jokes and laughed during recess. Why was he talking to her like that? Sarah was only 16 and he was an old man. He wasn't a member of our Richmond congregation. I had never seen him before. His hand on our car door and the way he ogled and talked to Sarah were all wrong. It happened so fast, yet unfolded in slow motion. Sarah's eyes widened, her face reddened, and she climbed into the back seat without saying anything. Janice and I followed. The man shut our car door and faded back to the woman and children. The woman had long hair. Most of the women in our congregation wore their hair short. "That was weird," Janice said. "What a creepy man. He's a stranger and he touched our car door. Ooh, what's the matter with him?" "I think he's got a crush on you," I said to Sarah. "But he's old enough to be a grandfather." Yuck. She held her nose and screwed up her face. We burst out laughing. I laughed until my stomach hurt and I felt safe again. We didn't unroll the windows to let the heat out of the car until we were sure that the man was gone. At Sunday dinner that day, Mom passed Dad the platter of fried chicken. Those two families who were here from the Creston area this morning, did the men come out to priesthood meeting? Before Sunday school, she held on to the platter while she waited for his answer. Sarah, Janice, and I glanced down at each other, then down at our plates. Dad shook his head. "No, I never got a chance to meet them. They were out of the chapel before I could introduce myself. I had to go right into my meeting." He speared a drumstick with his fork, put it on his plate, and passed the platter to Rob. "There's something funny about them," Mom said. I pictured the man rushing over to Sarah and the young woman's pregnant belly while she stood and watched blankly.